Jai.
So we're gathered this week, for a few days or more than a week, and I like to think that the center of our week is the Mount Govardhan, because the Govardhan Puja is just coming in a few days. And so I want to lecture about the mountain god, and related topics. And we will discuss the narrative itself, consisting as it does of the 4 chapters of the Bhagavatam. And of course, we'll do that, I guess, tomorrow by way of Gaur Lila. Enter into Krishna Lila from Gaur Lila. But tonight, I want to lecture on the principal lesson for sadhakas to be derived from the Govardhan Lila narrative of the Bhagavatam. And it's a very important lesson and a beginning lesson. And that is what? Saranagati. So Govardhan Lila is about many things. All of those things and the wonder of them rise out of the Saranagati that showcased in this Lila. Saranagati, of course, literally means surrender. And as we discuss it this evening, hopefully you'll begin to see the connection with the Govardhan Lila itself. Govardhan Lila, of course, is a Prakat Lila. Prakat Lila means it's a manifest Lila. And Prakat also, besides meaning visible or manifest, as opposed to the Aprakat, invisible Lila, the Golok Lila, the destination of the sadhakas by way of passing through the Prakat Lila as it's manifest on earth. Prakat also means, besides manifest, visible, it means the best. So it's the best from our point of view if we're paying attention, because it's the Lila of Bhagavan, Krishna, that manifests on earth, that gives us some idea about its nature, and serves as a portal, if you will. That we can take birth in, and from there, as I say, pass on to the Aprakat Lila, from which there's no return, unless you return to the Prakat Lila. Jiva Swami very beautifully in Gopal Champu retells the Prakat Lila in the setting of the Aprakat Lila. You may know that it's a nightly occasion in the kingdom of Nanda Maharaj to have a very extensive entertainment session after the Artik to Narasimhadev, and dinner for guests and so on and so forth. Then the residents of his kingdom assemble, and so many wonderful performers with the pleasure of Krishna and Balaram entertained them and the guests. Anyway, that's a very beautiful eternal evening. At any rate, in Gopal Champu, Jiva Goswami describes how 2 minstrels, who would wander as they do, from place to place, and put the lives of people to music. They could remember their important events in their lives, the birth of their children, their marriages, and so on and so forth. But they have a very special characteristic, besides having that talent, which was considerable in itself. They were said to know about the previous lives of people and could put that to song in poetry as well. So Nandanarj was very fascinated by this, and they were relatives, somewhat distant, but relatives of Nanda's family. So he asked them, because they happened to come into the area, please tell and put to song evening after evening our previous lives. So there in the Apricot Leela, the devotees are preoccupied through the storytelling of Snigdhakanta and Madhukanta, preoccupied with the Prakat Leela, their previous lives, as it happened on earth. It's very, very touching. But the point I'm making is that Apricot, in one sense, our goal is the Apricot Leela, to go back to God, as Prabhupada put it, right? But in the Apricot Leela, Jiva Goswami picks everyone as being preoccupied with the Prakat Leela, its fascination. It's said to be something, in my own language, like a film produced on location, has a special feature. If you make rocks and props and so forth that look like mountains in the background, whatnot in the studio, it's one thing. But if you go to Wyoming or something and film it there on location, that's a special feature. So the human-like Leela, performed in human society, has some extra special effects, if you will, and very charming, that much more so for humans like ourselves. It's called the Nadar Leela, whereas the Apricot Leela is called the Deva Leela. It's a little more godly because it's slightly bit more sense of Aishwarya, majesty there. But when performed on earth, then it's very close to us. We, in one sense, put our focus to go to the Apricot Leela, but those in the Apricot Leela are longing to take birth in Prakat Leela. And we should as well, because it is the portal to the Apricot Leela. So it's said that when devotees attain bhava and Swarup Siddhi, then they take birth in the Prakat Leela, wherever it's manifest on earth. And there they acquire further development that could only take place, could only occur, could only come about through association with those Yajasiddhas, eternal associates of Krishna. It can't be learned. Those Swamis have written about the stages, those further stages beyond brain in the Braj Leela, but they've admitted there's not too much you can really say about it. You can give the definition of the term, give an example, but one has to go there to find out. I've likened it before to this idea, at least in the United States, they have like for the professional sports like football or baseball or basketball, and they have a draft where they draft the best college students for different teams, right? So these were the best in the college, but now they're in the professional league, everyone's the best. So the whole game is moving at a much more faster, spontaneous speed, and with just a natural ability and affinity and understanding that they can't get in college. They have to come to the professional league, sit on the bench and get some practice and be thrown onto the field in the association of the pros, and then they can gradually imbibe that. So The Prakat Lila is something like that for sadhakas. So, and there we are prepared to enter the Prakat Lila. So, the Prakat Lila therefore has many important lessons for sadhakas. It's like, to give another example, like a trailer of the movie, what it would be like. Watch it, it's very exciting. You want to go, something like that. So this is extraordinary exercise of the grace of the Godhead, Krishna, Leela, to open this door to Shweta Dweep. Shweta Dweep means white island. It's white because it's said to be in an ocean of milk. That milk represents affection, like the cow's milk. If you bring the calf near her, then she will start to gush, right? So you have to swim through an ocean of perfection to get there. It's a big place, but it looks small. I've said before that the world of time and space, which is our frame of reference, is very, very small. It's small-minded, it's narrow, it's uncomfortable. It doesn't fit for us. We feel like life should be bigger. There shouldn't be limitations that we encounter. We should be able to go beyond them. And we, in human life, repeatedly we repeatedly celebrate the extent to which we break a boundary, what was previously a boundary. Right? That the ocean was flat, and we found out it wasn't. We went from Europe to the Americas, they went to the moon, or they went, second faster in the Olympics, and it's headlines, and it's a golden medal, and so forth. Where it went, swish. It didn't even hit the rim. So this is just human life, seeking, yearning for the perfection that lies within the Atma, within the human form of life. Is seeking that which the human vehicle affords us the opportunity to pursue. That Dulabha Manava Janama Satsange Tara E Bhavasin. Dulabha Manava Janama. The Manava Janama, human birth, Dulabha, is rare. How many do you think germs are on the end of my finger? There's a lot of them. More than there are humans in the planet. Right? So human life is very rare. There's just a few of us. And nobody's going anywhere, so we should get used to one another. But Dulabha Manava, Govinda says, human life is Janama. The birth of human life is very rare. Dulabha Janama, Dulabha Manava Janama Satsange Taraha Ebhava Sindhu. The Bhava Sindhu, the ocean of material emotions, I think you have experienced them. They take us up, and as high as we go is as low as we'll fall. That's material life. Don't ride highs. Because they precipitate the fall. Right? So this is yoga. This is that spiritual life. To be equally balanced, not ride that being tossed and turned on the waves of our emotions. If we want to cross over that world of material emotions, two things Govinda says in this poem I'm citing, Dulabha Manava Janama Satsanga. If you have human life and satsanga, association with sat, with those who are real, sadhus, then you have what you need to cross the world, ocean of material emotions. And of course, we cross the ocean of material emotions and enter into psychological, emotional reality of Bhakti Rasa. Entering the Prakat Lila. So the Prakat Lila is very important, and it in particular, comparatively, to the, for example, the narratives like Govinda Lilamrita, Krishna Bhavanamrita of the Apricot Lila that we find from some of our acharyas. Comparatively, the Prakat Lila narrative, the primary one being that of the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam, and then the commentaries on that, and then the texts that the Goswamis have written that further tell those Leelas with greater detail in an effort to bring out the emotion, the transcendental emotions that drive them, that we might develop impressions of those emotions ourselves, which will then in turn drive our own practice. Right? So that Prakat Lila, in particular, compared to the Apricot Lila, it has lessons for sadhakas, teaching us how to enter into it. So this Govardhan Lila, as we'll see going forward in the days we gather, perhaps the biggest lesson for sadhakas is Saranagati. Saranagati. Saranagati is a concept that I believe Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur cites a verse in his Gita commentary regarding Saranagati from the Rig Veda. Can't remember the verse, and it's a little bit abstract, as you might expect from the Rig Veda, from the Shruti. Welcome. But through it, in his translation, he wants to say to us, this is coming from the Shruti, this idea from God Himself. Later, we find it in the Purana. In Vayu Purana, there's a famous verse that reappears in Vaishnava Tantra, in Hari Bhakti Vilas. Goswami has cited it. And it's the famous verse that is cited again in the Bhakti Sandarbha of Swami, of course, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, and the works of our Thakur Bhakti Vinod, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Bhakti Bhakti Sridhar Goswami, which I'll go into that. But it's an old concept, and so this main verse from the Vayu Purana that you probably know, and it calls out the five angas and one angi of Sharanagati. Angi means body and anga means limb. So those that are the limbs, they serve to facilitate, promote the angi. It's like our limbs serve the entirety of our body. So that verse goes, Anukula se sankalpa pratikula se varni. Rakshik shatri vishvaso gopitve varanam tata. Atmanikshepa karpani sadvidha sharanagati. Shri Sharanagati. So, briefly, before we go into them in greater depth, these 5 of these, again, are centered around one. And the one is sometimes described as Gopritve Varanam Tata, and sometimes as Rakshik Shatri Vishvashvo. Gopritva Varanam Tata means that I accept Krishna as that Krishna is my maintainer. I live in the world with the sense that Krishna is maintaining me. Rakshik Shatri Vishvashvo, this means that I live in the world with the sense that Krishna is protecting me. So, for example, Jiva Goswami in Bhakti Sandarbha says, the Angi is, Krishna is the maintainer. But in his commentary in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, where the verse comes as an Anga of Bhakti itself, Sharanagati, to do Sharanagati, as presented by Rupa Goswami, Jiva Goswami comments that Rakshikshati Vishvashva is the Ami. So different opinions. But these two, Krishna is my maintainer, Krishna is my protector. And Anukul, Pratikul, two more. I accept whatever is favorable for bhakti, whatever is unfavorable, I reject. And Atmanik Shepka means Atmani Vedana. That something like I give myself over to Krishna, like an animal pet. The pet gives himself over to the master, something like that. And Karpanye or Dainya, humility. This is the sixth. So this is the brief mention of them. But the importance of Saranagati, to emphasize that and give some history of it, I think would be, to give some history to help emphasize its importance will be useful. Prior to the Gaudiya Sampradaya's formation under the out of the ecstasy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Nityananda Prabhu's distribution of that ecstasy, we find the concept of Saranagati to be very prominent in the Ramanuja Sampradaya. Ramanuja Sampradaya has a different way, I should say, of talking about bhakti as a yoga, as a path. In Ramanuja Sampradaya, it's thought that if one properly executes dharma, one becomes qualified for gyan. From dharma comes or treading the karma path, being a religious person. If you inquire into the nature of dharma, dharma jignasu, tato, dharma jignasu, human life is the time to inquire into dharma, how to live one's life in consideration of God. That's the basic idea. It's a beautiful idea. As much as bhakti transcends the bhakti marg, the limits of the karma marg, it doesn't mean the karma itself, marg, is not beautiful. It's a beautiful thing to identify the facts, those features of nature, prominent features in the macrocosm of nature that I'm dependent upon in order for me, a microcosm of nature in terms of my psychophysiological makeup. I have senses, which I see, I hear, I smell, touch, and so forth, and come to know or act through the active senses, the legs, the arms, and so forth. But in order for these to function, I'm dependent upon something in the macrocosm. So obviously, for example, in order to see, I depend on the light from the sun, or its reflection on the moon, or harnessing it, through electricity and so on and so forth. I'm dependent on wind for speech, and so to live with an understanding of our dependence in terms of our sensual pursuits on the macrocosm of nature, and to revere it as such. It's said that, I often quote it was Grover Cleaver, if you love somebody, they'll tell you all the secrets. Right? So the idea then in Hinduism is that by following the Dharma, Varnashram Dharma system, of course it's not in place now, this is called the Yuga, it's another thing, but follow the Varnashram system, inquire into Dharma, live a truly religious life. That means everything you do is colored with remembrance of and gratitude expressed towards the Godhead. So there's the Surya Namaskar that you get up in the morning, for example. It's a very thoughtful, theologically insightful perspective, but if not understood, looks like they're worshiping the sun. What's this? It's a little bit different than what the Aztecs did. Not to dismiss them, but the Vedic culture was a little more had a considerable theology underlying its apparent animism. And we're worshiping a hill here. So it looks like animism, just the worship of nature. But as we'll see, we go forward in the days we'll discuss, it's quite theologically more rich and thoughtful than that, which isn't a bad thing in itself. You got to start somewhere, right? And recognize that in order to function, we're dependent on something greater than ourselves, whether it be a powerful manifestation of nature, whatnot. So if you inquire into religious life and conduct yourself accordingly, then you have a reverential disposition, and you're living with gratitude towards nature and the bounty that it provides by working cooperatively with it, rather than working against it, raping it. This is the environmental crisis that was born of Christianity's brief wedding with science, which is later divorced. And I like to say that science was born as a Christian, which is true. Later in its boyhood, it became agnostic. In its adulthood, it's become an atheist. But if it's to live in the old age, it would have to become a mystic. So, at any rate, it's a, what did Descartes say? Cogito ergo sum. A very limited idea compared to something similar in the Vedic culture, that you're not the body. This was his idea, we're not the body, but along with it was everything else is a body. We can do whatever we want to it. So anyway, if you inquire and earnestly apply yourself to the scriptural texts, for example, which speak about the varnashram lifestyle, what really happens, the real fruit of that, is not the things that you get, the bounty of life by living religiously, but there's something else that's very subtle that you get, and that's faith. You get faith in the efficacy of following the scriptural directives and mandates. And this faith then gradually causes you to inquire further. This is the classical idea, and from religious life, how to live a good human life, to what is life? What does it mean? What is its purpose? So from dharma, artha, kama, moksha. What am I? I'm not a human. I'm more than a human. I'm consciousness, right? So from inquiring into dharma, therefore it's a dharma jignasu. Inquiry into dharma is followed by brahma jignasu. Inquiring into Brahman, the nature of Brahman, the nature of the Atma. From a religious kind of orientation to life to a mystical and spiritual experiential orientation. And then it would be in the Ramanuja Sampradaya, followed by Rasa Jignasu, if you will. So perform the Dharma, become qualified to do Gyan. And as you become proficient in Gyan, then you can meditate on God, which is bhakti. So in the Ramanuja Sampradaya, this bhakti is very high. It's a post-liberated, kind of beyond moksha, what goes on, the life within moksha, which is bhakti rasa. But Gaudiya Vaishnavism is a little different. We say bhakti is so high, but it's also so generous that it comes down to anyone who has shraddha, who through sadhu sangha has developed the requisite faith in bhakti, can take it up. Now, this is not a contradiction with what the Ramanuja Sampradaya says, because they say those who are not qualified, who don't have adhikar or eligibility, to do bhakti yoga, to meditate on Bhagwan. Not everybody can just do that, right? Has not passed through Dharma, has not passed through Gyan, and may not even be within the system of the Dharma. They may be outcasts by the Hindu system, outside of the Varnashram, like all of us. What about us? So in Ramanuja Sampradaya, they say, no, they're not excluded because they can do Sharanagati. Sharanagati. And I want to go on with this later, but just to mention now, and Bhaktivinoda Thakur is very insightfully connected Shraddha with Sharanagati. Sharanagati is the outer expression of Shraddha, which faith in Bhakti, which is the qualification, the adhikar, the eligibility to tread the path. If you have the requisite faith, you have that faith, you don't need anything else. You need faith to do anything, but you need other things too. If you want to do yoga, Astanga yoga, you need faith in the process, but you need to do have a few other qualifications. You have to be celibate. Name a few. That's one. That's enough. Forget it. It's a huge qualification that's required. Bhakti is more generous. Why? Because bhakti is more powerful. How so? Because bhakti is nirguna. It comes from there. Gyan, yoga, karma. Gyan, yoga, they come from sattva-guna. And karma one comes from rajaguna. Bhakti comes from the nirguna. So coming from that side, it has great power. So in Ramanuja Sampradaya, there are examples, and from the ancient texts that are part of the body of our spiritual canon as well, whether it be the Veda or the different Puranas, and so aside from our own Chaitanya Charitamrita, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Brihad Bhagavatamrita. The Bhagavatam, of course, is a Purana, so Ramanujas will accept that as a scriptural evidence and so on and so forth. So from the greater body, there are a number of examples of Sharanagatas, and they tend to be those persons who are outside of the Varnashram, like Prahlad, Adaitya, born in the family of Hiranyakasipu, not exactly a religious guy. But Prahlad did Sharanagati. He did one anga of Sharanagati. Rakshik Shatati Vishpashva. Krishna will protect me when Hiranyakasipu tried to kill him in so many ways. And he believed it, and it happened. Krishna protected him, right? You know the story in the Bhagavad, it's in other Puranas as well. Or Bibhishan in Ram Leela. Bibhishan was the brother of Ravan, who had some affinity for Ram, but he was outside of the whole system. It was a beautiful story, of course, how he did Sharanagati, he surrendered. Ram accepted him in his fold. So many examples like this are given typically. There's a famous story, and I don't know, forgive me, what temple it's related with, but I believe it's the Sri Sampradaya. It's a modern story, comparatively. This is from the mytho-historical period in the Puranas and so forth. But there was a devotee who was outside of the Varnashram system. So he was born outside that and had habits that didn't correspond with the habits that are recommended, if not mandated, within the Varnashram system. And so he couldn't participate in the temple worship, but he was attracted, and so he sat behind the temple where the altar was, outside. He would sit outside, back in the back of the temple, facing what would be the back of the deity, of course, through the wall, stone wall of the temple. And all the bhaktas, passing by and think nothing of him. Get out of the way. And then maybe circumambulating the temple. But I think anyway, he would spend his time there and in his heart, give himself to the deity. And one day, when all the bhaktas came into the temple, the deity was turned around. And so they understood, and they carved a hole in the back of the temple for that devotee. It's a beautiful story. It's a true story, of course. So the power of Saranagati, a little bit of faith, properly understood and expressed as it should be in the form of Saranagati. It's a very beautiful thing that Bhaktivinoda Thakur has done to tie these two together, because faith is kind of like, where is it? How does it look like? It's like a feeling. So he's kind of given it more of a concreteness to it by connecting it, and appropriately so, with the angas, 6 limbs of Saranagati. So from Ramanuja Sampradaya, this is prominent in Ramanuja Sampradaya. If you can't do Bhakti Yoga, you do Saranagati. And just by this alone, I'm going to attain by Kutha. Now, Rupa Goswami has taken Saranagati, and in his list of angas, limbs of Bhakti, he's listed Saranagati as one. And among the qualities of Krishna, which are worth knowing, because then you think he's he's so attractive, he can do that. You get to like him. You think, why would I, give myself to anybody else? Devotees reach this simple conclusion. So many great devotees throughout their lives, they reach this very simple conclusion just by hearing about Krishna. We need to hear more what he's like. So anyway, one of his qualities listed by Rupa Goswami lists 64 qualities, I think, in Bhakti Sandarbha, or maybe Krishna Sandarbha, I forget now. Jiva Goswami listed 84 qualities. Well, there's unlimited qualities, but amongst them, Sharanapati Palaka. Sharanagati is also sometimes said Sharanapati. Sharanagati, Sharanagati, Sharanapati. Sharanapati Palaka. This is the quality of Krishna. He is the Palaka. He is the protector of the Sharanagatas. He takes charge of them. Reminds me of a song of Bhaktivinoda, Atma Samarpane. Bhaktivinoda, well, I should get to that, because Bhaktivinoda has gone in some depth into Sharanagati. But from Rupa Goswami, we find in Bhakti Sandarbha, as again I mentioned, we find description of Sharanagati by Jiva Goswami, and in our Paribar, the Bhaktivinoda Paribar, coming from Bhaktivinoda, Bhaktivinoda has very much centered on this Sharanagati. It's peculiar, not peculiar, but particular to our line, not necessarily, or not the same emphasis or focus has been given in other Paribars, Nityananda Paribar, Kadadhar Paribar, Dvaita Paribar, and so other different lineages. So it's a characteristic of our line, the emphasis on Sharanagati. Bhaktivinoda Thakur wrote a songbook entitled Sharanagati, where he has given several songs for each limb of Sharanagati, for the devotees to sing their way into surrender, which, as I mentioned earlier briefly, is, I know it sounds like a tall thing, surrender, but it's the beginning of bhakti. It's not the end. If you think, in the end, I'll surrender, you haven't started yet. In Gita, we find Sharanagati in what's sometimes thought to be the most famous verse, right? Sarvadharman Prityadyamami Kam Sharanam Param Tvam Sarvapape Moksha Yishami Masacha. Here are the marginal characteristics, the and the principal correct character, the Srup Lakshan of Saranagati is given. Krishna's part of that says, of course, Manmanabha Manbhaktu, Madhyaji Manmaskuru. This 18th chapter. Just think of me, become my devotee. Simply do namaskar to me. This is, and he said earlier in a very similar verse in the 9th chapter, this is the Rajavidya. This is the end of knowledge. Bhakti is the end of knowledge. It's the full expression of knowing. Loving. To love is to know. To love Krishna is to love. And to love Krishna is to know. And a kind of knowing by which one understands there's nothing more to be known. I was directed to a verse in the Bible on the plane coming here by the man sitting next to me. It was a fascinating experience for me, the whole ride. I sat down on the plane, the man next to me, I was on the aisle, he was in the middle, and his daughter was on the right. And in his, the back of the seat, they have a little folder. There was a book with a golden, edge around. That's the Bible next to that. The Bible had in North Carolina, in California, And it was apparent that he was eager to talk. So I was a little bit apprehensive with that, how that might turn out, but it blew my mind. This guy was incredible. And anyway, what was the verse? It was something about, I should have written it down, but something about the peace of understanding anyway, it was the essence of what I said in biblical language. There's a kind of knowing by which one knows there's nothing more that needs to be known. It's known. Another nice verse he showed me. I was making comments, and he would reference the Bible said that too. So I was talking. I told him that the Upanishads said, "One who says it, he knows God, does not know God." This guy just lit up, every time I said these things. He looked older than me, but it turned out he's only 49 and I'm 73. And he was amazed to find that out, that I lived in a monastery for 53 years. And he was just like in total reverence of me, and it was humbling me. So we have this rapport going back and forth 3/4 of the ride until his daughter said, "Spend some time with me too." So the other verse, really nice verse that he cited, was one of the apostles was saying, "We are children now of Christ, but we don't know what our adulthood will be like." Because I had said to him, it's beyond speech, beyond thought, where we want to go. We can try to talk about it, or we can never say enough about it, but we can't capture it with words. We can't capture it with thoughts. He turned to the Bible and showed me. This is what he's saying here. We don't know what our where we're going, but we have a Father in Christ, and we're his children, and we're confident with that. We feel good about that. Wherever he takes us, it's already good. How much better it will be. You cannot even describe it in words. From where thought going returns, the Upanishads say. Where speech going, it returns. This fellow, Len, his name, was a Saranagata. I mean, I never met a guy who was more comfortable in his skin psychologically, and just the way he talked to me. He was just he was a Saranagata. He was living just to remember God in everything that he did. He had this Pentecostalish idea of the Spirit. The Holy Spirit is everywhere. He told me that in Acts within the Bible, there's Apparently that's a section of the Bible. And they're on the second floor of a building. Jesus is there with the apostles, and people come from different nations here. And Jesus speaks to them, and they all understand him, although they all speak different languages, something like that. So this was the work of the Holy Spirit. So they have some idea that this Holy Spirit is active in the world and in everyone, and it can be contacted, and you can know what to do, the best thing, most godly thing in every circumstance. And he told me that he had given up his job, and he was kind of a freelance, if you will, kind of a minister in his church in California, the church that he was affiliated with. He would sit with groups, get together with men from the community, and they'd get together, and then they would talk about, he used a metaphor like gardening. I was gardening today, and I found this weed. I was gardening, I found a rock. And then they have to talk about it. You know, what is it? What got in the way? What distracted me? You know, this week, this day, and then get strength from the numbers of the Sangha to overcome it. This is sadhusanga. Sit, read, pass the book around, and everybody says, this is where I failed today. This is where I failed today. This is where I failed today. And then go to bed on that note. And then you can come to the Sangha tomorrow night too. Well, you're going to, nobody's going to want to say, right? You got to say it, but nobody's going to want to say it. So nobody's going to want to do it. That's the idea. So it's very, very beautiful to meet with him and see, you know, the universality of the concepts that we're talking about. You know, we have a sort of language to them and so on and so on. And it can feel very narrow, and someone's not familiar. It can feel like, oh, I'm not sure what's going on here, but they seem like nice people. But when we speak about the universe, the concepts, the universality of them, everybody can be included. I don't know how I segued into him, but it's an interesting experience I had with Saranagati. But I think we were talking about the Gita, yes, and the idea there that this is the beginning, Saranagati. It's not the end. Krishna says, always think of me, become my devotee. And the kind of the question comes from Arjuna, how do you do that? Well, this is how you do it. Sarva dharma prityaja. So this is the marginal characteristics. This Sharanagati is from the negative side, if you will, giving up the dharma. Dharma projita kaita. Well, that's the Bhagavatam. Same idea, right? Sarva dharman prityaja. Sarva dharman prityaja. So I mentioned many things in the Gita, Krishna saying. I mentioned yoga, Jnana yoga, karma yoga, Astanga yoga in the 6th chapter, dharma, varnashram, so many things. I've mentioned renunciation, and all this is all sarva dharma, giving up all these things. This is Sharanagati, giving up all these things, these methods for improving oneself, for attaining one's prospect in life, to become fulfilled, to become happy, to become enlightened. Give up all these things. Sarva dharma prityaja. And what is the Sarup Lakshan? Mam ekam sharanam. Do sharanam to me. Take shelter of me. Mam ekam. Krishna says, me alone. Now, it could mean Narasingha. That's him too. It could mean Vishnu. Vishnu Bhakti is there. But that's the broader sense. But of course, we are Gaudiyas, so we hear it a little differently. Krishna is saying to Arjuna, take shelter of me alone. Mam ekam. Sarva dharman prityaja. Mam ekam sharanam brajna. Pujapad Sridhar Maharaj commenting on this verse said a very beautiful thing. Verse again goes, Sarva dharman prityaja. That means all other gods in the Hindu pantheon and goddesses, which are deities, if you will, personifications behind powerful influences of nature that I said earlier we're dependent upon. We're dependent upon the sun. we bow to the sun as if it's a god, Vivaswan, or to the river from which we had water, or through in a more, well, even in modern times, we can do commerce by traversing down the river and so on and so forth, independent. So all these gods and goddesses, the worship of them, the gratitude that you have for them, which is part of the Dharma Marg, all of that will be included and more in me alone, because they don't have the power to do the things that they do without me empowering them. They're empowered features, aspects of myself that dive in and train the controlling godly factor behind the machine of material nature. So Ma may come, Sharanam Brajan. He says, so come to me. Brajan is a verb here. Pujapat Sridhar Maharaj in his commentary says, oh, when Krishna said Braja, in his own mind, he went to Braj, the noun, to Braj Leela, and he couldn't speak anymore after that. Bhagavad Gita stopped. Krishna's in the Kurukshetra speaking about Dharma. As I said in my own commentary at the onset, was he ever there before? What happened? Now he's on the battlefield. He's going to speak about Dharma to Arjuna, but was he ever there before? When we look to the Bhagavatam and find history, yes, he was there before. When everybody from Dwarka came to Kurukshetra during the solar eclipse, and the Brajbasis came, and there was a reunion between Krishna and the Brajbasis and Krishna and the Gopis, a very significant chapter of the Bhagavatam that is expressed outwardly and festively in Gaudiya Vaishnavam as Pradayatra, Jagannath Swami ki jai, the big eyes open, no eyelids on him, on Jagannath. He's looking. Where is she? Where is she? Dwarka is I want to say Jagannath Puri is a moment in the Dwarka Leela. It's a moment. The whole Jagannath Puri is a manifestation of one moment in the Dwarka Leela, where Krishna is reflecting back on the Braj Leela, having heard it, Narad, as is explained in Brihad Bhagavatam, to talk about it. And he goes into a trance, and oh no, God, Krishna's gone into a trance. What are we going to do now? And everybody in Dwarka is like concerned. Narad becomes concerned too when he comes out of the trance and says, I guess that was a disturbance. And what does Krishna say to him? Kadopakari Smritidapriyanam. No, Naradaji, don't think like that. One who reminds one of his beloved is the best friend. That is Narada. And Narada is the Vaidhi Bhakti incarnation of Madhu Mangal, the Brahman in Krishna Leela, who is a Narmasaka, who assists Krishna in his romantic life, reminds him of his lover, helps him to meet with her, and so on and so forth. Kadopakari Smritidapriyanam. This is the Mahavakya of the first canto of Brihad Bhagavatamrita. So beautiful. So this is a moment, this Jagannath Puri is a whole town, whole village, right, with a deity that is just a manifestation of this moment. Jagannath is Krishna. When Mahaprabhu saw him, when he had darshan for the first time, he saw him with a flute and a peacock feather. That was his vision. So, and his eyes, he's looking everywhere. He's in Satyika Bhav. His arms have gone in, and his hairs are standing on him, and he's almost unrecognizable. And Balaram looks at him, same thing happens to him. Subhadra looks at him, same thing happens to her, right? So Jagannath is looking everywhere. It's Krishna looking for Vrindavan, looking for Radha. What was the point? So, beautiful idea. So Sridhar Maharaj in his commentary on the Gita, he says, Sarvadharma Jamame Kam Sharanam Braja. He says, when the word Braja, which here means to come to me, it's a verb. Give up all the Dharma, surrender to me only. Mame Kam Sharanam, do Sharanam, and come to me, Braja. But Braja as a noun means Vrindavan, the Braja Leela. So Krishna is on the battlefield. Was he ever there before speaking about Dharma? Yes, he was. He spoke to the gopis. Ayi Bhakti. What is it? Ayi Bhakti. Can't remember the verse, 84th chapter. Ayi Bhakti. He says, everybody, all kinds of people approach me, he told the gopis. People approach me for things. People approach me to get away from things. That's karma and jnana. Some people approach me with devotion and they worship me. But the way you approach me, that's different. And by that, I'm entirely purchased. I'm standing here as a prince. I know I rode in here on an elephant, and there are Brahmins praising me and sages offering homage, and trumpets are bugling and drums drumming and so forth. But I'm just going through the motions of this whole thing here. My heart is always with you. More man, Vrindavan. My mind is Vrindavan. My mind is in Braj. It's always there with you. Don't think otherwise. He tried it. This is the way he spoke to the gopis and the Brajavasis. So, idea in the Gita, of course, is what he's speaking about Dharma to Arjuna in a place where he's been before and he's spoken before. You don't think this Prema Dharma, this Braj Bhakti idea will eke out in the Gita in his speech to Arjuna? It's a kind of a universal speech to everybody, right? But hidden in there, woven in there, we can find, oh, this is his heart. His heart's coming out a little bit here. His heart's coming out a little bit here. And it's in Vrindavan. So Sridhar Maharaj, when he read that verse, he said, Sarva Dharman Parityajam Mam Ekam Sharanam Braja. When Krishna said Braja, his mind went to the noun. He went to Braj. The Gita stopped. Couldn't speak anymore. What could be said about Braj? The nature of that bhakti. What could be said about the place? Uddhava went there. Uddhava Mahashaya, he is the guru of Krishna in Dwarka, the advisor, the Shastric advisor. Krishna had a Shastric advisory board. For that. ISKCON has one of those. But it was Uddhava, and he was Shastravit. He knew all the Shastra. But Krishna sent him to Vrindavan to show him there's something beyond the Shastra, where Shastra can't take us. And Uddhava, whose emotional makeup is Dasya Bhakti mixed with little Sakya. In Dwarka, the Dasya is prominent. When he comes to Braj, the Sakya can come out and he can experience Pranay. So he can relate with Krishna's friends and the gopis who he ministered to. And after he talked to the parents, Krishna, to the friends of Krishna, to the gopis in particular, he wandered around in Vrindavan, making poetry about what goes on there, to try to do justice to it. Shruti Vir Vigyam, he says, Shruti Vir Vigyam, this place is beyond the Shruti, beyond the Shruti. Now we say that faith, Shraddha, properly understood, is Shastriya Shraddha, faith in the Shastras, what the scriptures say, not just some belief or faith. It's faith derived from the scriptural argument, which if we hear will strengthen our faith. And it's true that faith means Shastriya Shraddha, but Bhaktivinoda Thakur makes another point. The Jagdharmi says it's true, but it's not the whole story. That's only the partial story. And that's where he says, what is Shraddha? It is Sharanagati. And you don't need to know any scripture to do that. That guy who sat, that devotee who sat, the deity turned around for, you think he knew the scripture? Yes, he did. And he couldn't repeat a word of it. He couldn't cite a verse, right? He could say Krishna, hey, Govinda, like Draupadi, Govinda, like Gajendra, another Sharanagata, an elephant, he's outside of the Varnashram, right? You know the story? He's another example of Sharanagata. He is called out. Vishnu saved him from the crocodile, right? So Bhakti Vinod Thakur says, Sharanagati, our measure of Sharanagati, that determines self-faith. Sharanagati is the outward expression of Shraddha. And this is the beginning of Bhakti. As I said, he wrote many songs about Sharanagati. Beautiful songs to help us. They're very beautiful. They're easy to sing. They're heavy. When he talks about what is anukul and pratikul, giving up what's unfavorable, accepting what's favorable, you're going to narrow your life a lot. If you read those songs, if you sing those songs, you're going to turn off, well, it used to be the TV, but Facebook, you're going to turn off a lot of things. Saying, help, this is not favorable for what I'm doing here. This is not helping me. What am I here for? What essential, what don't be on the peripheral of this. Be Saranagati, Pujapat Sridhar Maharaj, of course, he wrote a book about Sharanagati. It's the only book he wrote. He composed beautiful Sanskrit prayers, poems. He did write a commentary on Bhagavad Gita and so forth. And he translated Karga Samhita, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu from Sanskrit into Bengali, and so forth. You know, he did a fair amount of scholarly work, but he wrote one book, Prapanna Jivanamrita. Prapanna Jivanamrita. Prapanna means Sharanagati. The Jivanamrita, the nectar, Amrit, the deathless. Amrit means Amrit. Mrita means death, so deathless. The deathless and Amrit means nectarous, like the fountain of youth that everybody's looking for, right? It exists. Right? It's found. Ayur harati vaipum sam ujjanastam jayanaso. Tasyartya jano nitya uttama sloka varta. This is the fountain of youth. Uttama sloka vartaya. Bhagavatam very poetically says, and the sun rises ujjan astam jayanaso every day. Rising and setting of the sun. With the rising and the setting of the sun, ayur harati. Beautiful thing, the rising and the setting of the sun, Bhagavatam, ayur harati. With the rising and the setting of the sun, your ayur, your life, harati, is being taken away. Whoa, goodness. Your human life, got it, it's valuable. Time, how valuable is it? You cannot buy it back. 1 second. You cannot buy it back 1 second. And now you have human life. We already talked about how rare it is, how valuable it is. And you have sadhu sangha. How you should spend your time. Ayur harati vaipum sam ujjanastam chayanaso. But it's rising and setting of this setting, it takes away your life. Of everyone. Ayur harati vaipum sam ujjanastam chayanaso tasyarte yachano nitya. Except for one. Who? Who can escape time? Uttama Shloka Vartaya. Who is doing Uttama Shloka Vartaya, who is singing about Uttam Shloka, is the name for Krishna, who is, if at all, described, if at all, captured to some extent by words. It's in the beautiful poetry of the Bhagavad and extensions of the Bhagavad, like we have in our Lila Granthas and texts of our Goswamis and charges in our line. Uttama Shloka Bhartaya. This is the fountain of youth. This is the elixir of immortality. his book, Sridhar Maharaj's book, Prapanna Jivanamrita, the immortal nectar of the lives, the jiva, of the Prapanna Jivanamrita, of the surrendered, of those who are doing Saranagati. He wrote a book, Prapanna Jivanamrita. It has about 8 chapters, and the central focus of the book is to go through the 6 angas, the 6 limbs that we mentioned of Saranagati, and to cite verses from relevant texts and so forth that exemplify them, that we may explore those ideas, those angas further, and gain some greater understanding of them. And in the Chaitanya Saraswat Math, his mission, it was thought, this is the only book you need. This book only, and everything you have. I mean, it's a beautiful theology. We could talk about it forever and entertain you and so forth. But what we would go away and do, that was very entertaining. Jai, blissful. And we used to go to myself and some of my earlier disciples to Vrindavan, and twice a year for 2 months, 2 months in Kartik, 2 months in during the spring, around the time of Gorpunim. We had an ashram there. I had an ashram with a godbrother of mine called Upanuga Bhajan Ashram at the time. And so when we were there during Kartik, I believe it was, there was often a carnival. So the Ferris wheel was brought in, an Indian version of it all, but of a roller coaster and stuff like that. People would come and attend, and there would be a Bhagavad speaker also as part of the whole thing. We went to India, right? The amusements included a Bhagavad speaker, which is nice, but they went for an evening of entertainment, right? To entertain themselves. He wasn't talking to them about Saranagati. I could entertain you, but it's more important to help you surrender, so that you can be eternally entertained within, by entering into the reality of these narratives, right? So Prapanna Jivanamrita, and Sridhar Maharaj told us that this is the very life of sadhana. If you are a sadhaka, this is the very life. And without striving for Saranagati, you're snick. What time is it? Snick. How many more minutes I have till that's over? Don't expect the results. Then when some emotional issue comes up, you'll be carried away by it and think, Gurudev, why did that happen to me? I'm doing bhakti. No. Are you sure? Or to what extent? Saranagati is the life. I had a copy, it was stolen, unfortunately, by some lucky thief. I don't think he knew what he was doing, but we used to have a place that we rented in Vrindavan also, and we kept things there. It was broken into when we weren't there. Some books were taken, but it was Prabhupada, my Guru Maharaj's copy of Prapanna Jivanamrita, and he signed his name on it. But this is in the possession of A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, and it was a beautiful thing to have, and that Saranagati, or that book Prapanna Jivanamrita, the printing of the book, the first edition, was paid for by Prabhupada's sister, Bhavatarini. It was a Harinam. She received Harinam from Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and then she wanted to receive Diksha from Pujyapada Sridhar Maharaj after Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur passed away. But Sridhar Maharaj was not inclined to give initiation to anyone until he was pushed, as you know the story, to do by Nityananda Prabhu. So she took initiation from Goswami Maharaj, another disciple of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. But anyway, Pishima, we used to call her Auntie, and she loved her brother Prabhupada. I mean, she just, and what he did, as all bhaktas, none of whom are envious, did what he did. This is a beautiful thing. Parivar, the Bhaktivinoda Parivar. Every Parivar has its differences and specialities and so forth. One of ours is emphasis on Saranagati. The other is creating the faith of everybody in the whole Western world that's connected with Gaudiya Vaishnavism, wherever they're connected formally. It's come beyond the borders of India and have been exemplified through the empowered, really desire of Bhakti Vinod that Bhakti Siddhanta gave shape to in the form of Gaudiya Mata that Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada took all over the world. And Pujapad Bhakti Krishna Deva Swami was reflected on the significance of that internally, Prabhupada's mission, and externally, and so forth. And you couldn't find a better example of a Sharanagata than A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada. Once I was told, I was in Braj. The godbrother approached me and he said, "Today I'm going to such and such village. Why don't you come with me?" I said, why I go there? He said that Madhukari is very good there. Madhukari is very good there. Madhukari is a system by which sadhus can meet their physical need to eat. We all need to eat, right? That's the bottom line. So there's a system that you go begging door to door and people will give, because that's the culture. So it's a system, right? So it's a renounced way of living. You don't have a job. You're just doing bhajan. And when you get hungry, you go and you beg. And Sukadeva Goswami is the classic example in the Bhagavatam doing Madhukari. He would go and beg milk and recite the Bhagavatam and move on. Really, he was giving the wealth of Hari Bhakti and taking little milk for his sustenance. So this system has been, kind of like formalized. So there's a way for sadhus to eat. So he said, Madhukari is very good there. And I chuckled. I said, "You're not doing Madhukari." That's not Madhukari. Over there, they butter the chapatis. Let's go there today. This is not Madhukari. Raghunath Das Goswami, he stationed himself out in front of the Jagannath temple. And when anyone would come out bringing prasad, then he would beg, and then whatever he would get, he would eat. But one day he started to think, yesterday I saw that guy, and he had some of those ladus. Wonder if he's going to come today. Something like that. Then he gave up the Madhukari. He said, I'm cheating. Then he went to the cowshed, and wherever the Jagannath prasad, after washing the plate, there was a little rice would fall, a little something when you wash the plate. He would go there and pick out the rice, wash it off, and eat it. His renunciation was frightening. And when Jayachandra, there's a whole story to this, gradually, because when he first came, he came from a wealthy family. When he first ran away from home, they couldn't catch up with him, and he joined Mahaprabhu. And the parents would send money every month. So with the money, he would hold festivals and give Jagannath Prasad to all Mahaprabhu's associates. And then he thought, what am I doing? I'm taking money, I'm a renunciate, I'm taking money from home. So he stopped that. Then he, as I said, he placed himself in front of the Jagannath temple, and gradually he found himself in the back where the plates were washed of the deity, and when no one was there, he'd go and collect some of the grains of rice and whatnot, wash them up and eat them. And one day he was eating. What happened? Mahaprabhu appeared there and said, "You're feasting and not inviting me? What is this? This is the real feast, the real Sharanagati, in the full sense of the term." So, what was I? So, anyway, so
You're talking about
Prabhupada. So yes, it's a nice story. So this guy says, "Godbrother, my it's a good place for Madhukari." I said, "You're not doing Madhukari." And then that day, I a couple of days later, I think it was Prabhupada's appearance or something. I gave a lecture, and I had heard in between that time and the time that my godbrother had invited me to do so-called Madhukari, with him that someone had said, "What's with this Bhaktivedanta Swami? You know, sadhu should live in Vrindavan and do Madhukari. He's flying on an airplane, you know, across the ocean." You know. So when I gave a lecture, one of those guys was present. So it just got, you know, just this guy said that. So I told him what Madhukari is. I said, "There's a system in Vrindavan you can do Madhukari. There's no system in New York in the winter, in the Bowery. There's no system there. Dressed in your pajamas, and you already speak English. I mean, looks like pajamas." That's what my Guru Maharaj did, with his faith in Harinam and Guru Nishta, in the order of his Guru. His Guru just recommended to him in a letter, upon being asked if there's any service he could render. Bhaktisiddhanta wrote him and said, "I think it would be good if you speak to people, and you're English speaking, if you speak to in English about bhakti." Prabhupada made that he used to tell us, "My Guru Maharaj ordered me to speak in English, so I've written these books and I'm making them available." He took that instruction as, it's like a suggestion, like an order. He lived on that order. Prabhupada was not a scholar in the same way you can find other scholars writing commentaries. He wouldn't like me to say that, maybe. He was a scholar, but not in the way some others. Some of the T's aren't always crossed, but he was like traveling around the world the whole time and writing his commentary very quickly. And he created a mission that was full of Sharanagats. When I look back, in the films, some of the films of New Dwarka, perhaps Los Angeles Temple, when we were young there, I see the devotees, I see them in their swarups, how they were living, how they were surrendered, how, if he said stand, stand. If he said sit, sit. If he said print books, print books. If he said burn the books, we would have burned the books without a second thought. Saranagati. He drew that from us, and he lived it himself. What it means to live in New York in the winter, coming from India at 70 years old. He was homeless. He just depended on Harinam, and see what happened. Krishna created embassies for him all over the United States, Canada, in places he didn't even go. In Vancouver, there was a temple of 300 devotees, Vancouver, Canada, 300 devotees. And Prabhupada never got the chance to go there. It's said that a Vaishnav is one who, upon seeing one chants Hare Krishna, chants Krishna, it just comes out of their mouth. Usually when I come in, the kirtan stops, but for Prabhupada, without even seeing him, people chanted Hare Krishna. And he is such a perfect example of Sharanagati. When he wrote his book, his prayer on the Jaladuta, coming across the ocean, the prayer to my friend Krishna. The first half of it, if you read it here, the first half of the verse, all about Sharanagati. First in the refrain, but it begins with he reasons with Krishna. What does it say? He says,
This to spare Arjuna.
Bengali, Bangla. Radharani Kushi Hobby, Kushi Hobby. I can't remember. Anyway, so he reasons with Krishna, right? My dear friend, it would be good for you if you could please Radharani. Krishna Tava Punya Hobby. Krishna Tava Punya Hobby. That's the beginning. So he says your life will be Dhruva Ati Boli Tomatai. Dhruva Ati Boli. This is for sure. Like Dhruva, the pole star, that's said to be in the Vedic astronomy. How you say? Not moving. Stationary. Others are moving around. So it's fixed, like the pole star. This is the fact that if Radharani is pleased with you, your life will be successful. Krishna goes, what? You know that? Yes. And my guru is Nayanamani Manjari, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. She is the representative of Radharani, and she has asked me to do something. So if you give me the power to do that, Radharani will be pleased with you and your life will be successful. And then he goes on, he speaks about it. My guru sent me to the Western world. What will I say? What will I do? When Prabhupada used to speak, wrote back to associates in India about New York, he said, it was like another planet. He had gone to another planet. He said, and the lights are at night. The whole night is lit up by electric lights. And he said, and nobody has a driver. Everybody has their own car. Because in India, very few people at that time had a car. We used to go to Vrindavan, you would never see a car. Never. The only car you would see was Prabhupada was driven by a driver in a car, dropped off, at the Krishna Balaram temple, and then, it parked somewhere. That was it. You would never, ever see a car in Vrindavan. First time I went to Vrindavan, we took the Radharani Express from Navadvip to Mathura, and it was 2 ways to get there. 3 ways. You could walk, and it was a long walk, or you could go by bicycle rickshaw or by tanga, by a horse, drawn cart. I went by tanga. So beautiful. And Raman Reti, Prabhupada's Krishna Balaram Mandir, it was like in the forest. It was out of the center of Braj, such a beautiful place. This is Prabhupada's home. He said, worship in Vrindavan, worship in Navadvip, worship Gaur, live in Braj, right? And from there he came, right? What an example of a Sharanagata in our line, what it has done, what his Sharanagati has done for the world in terms of Gaudiya Vaishnavism. We are all, to one extent or another, a product of that. So we have good examples, right? And this is the beginning of Bhakti. It's not the end, because it corresponds with faith. And faith is, if you have faith, you can practice. But what is that faith? Whoa. How does it show up? So you study these 6 angas of Sharanagati. I've spoken for some time. I'll hold off here. We'll go into the angas further, each one, in a subsequent talk. What are the moods behind them, and so forth. It has been beautifully and insightfully revealed by Thakur Bhakti Vinod. Thakur Bhakti Vinod ki jai. Jai Parivar ki jai. Sharanagati ki jai. Count Govardhan ki jai. Gaur Premanandi.
Bhaktivedanta Tripurari Maharaj, Shri Guru Maharaj ki jai.
What's the time?
7:39.